we
Recording is in progress.
We need to bring you up to the 21st century. So this is what we're going to do. Hi guys, how you doing? And welcome to season 2, episode 5, where Dave and I are going to basically go over things that we have changed our mindset on since we started personal training many moons ago.
Indeed.
Dave, I'm sure, like yourself, we thought that potentially it was a one-size-fits-all. If it fits your macros, certain forms of exercise, etc., were the go-to to get results from our clients.
Sorry, Callum, I've just poured water all over an extension plug. So I'm going to try and not set myself on fire or explode. Anyway, keep talking. I'm going to just...
Yeah, you tied yourself up whilst I tidy up things that we've changed our mindset on since starting our jobs, our careers, or our businesses. So without further ado,
you're halfway through the podcast, you know what's happened.
I think what we're going to do to begin with, I'll go first, and then I think it's a beneficial way for you, me, a bit of ping pong across, and then we can wrap up with any questions like we usually have at the end of the podcast. So one of the biggest things I thought that I had to do for a client to get results when I first started the job was literally that whole cookie cutter program mentality. I thought if I gave one client one program and they saw the result, that I could give the same program to another client and they would get an equal result, if not greater. Why did I think this? I guess I was naive. I was new. I had never actually put programming into practice, even though I spent 4 years at university doing a sports and exercise science degree with strength and conditioning and programming involved in it, but I never actually put the theory to the practice. And to begin with, I thought, you walk into a gym and that's what you do. And that's what all these trainers did. And ultimately, as I grew, as I became more experienced, it's safe to say that I no longer do that because everybody's completely individual. Thank God. Otherwise, I probably would be sitting here in a job speaking to you right now about programming.
Exactly. So we talked about this before, but for the podcast, how does that differ from having templates set up for specific goals and specific clients or specific client types?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. So at the end of the day, there's no point in reinventing the wheel. You're going to get clients that fit certain molds, that have certain experiences, just like you and I would. I think one of the things I've kind of combated over the years, especially from a business perspective, is putting certain systems in place. Now, whilst each client is completely individual, there's going to be certain elements of movement that client A is going to benefit just as much as client B, C, and D. So those movements will generally be templated in. Now, when I say movements, let's talk about the squat because everybody knows what a squat is. Mm-hmm. There's a variety of different squats that we can do. So for a beginner, I would probably just get them to do bodyweight squats. But somebody who's got a little bit more experience, I might get them to do goblet squats or dumbbell squats or sumo squats or even barbell back squats. So that's the progression. So the initial movement is in place.
Yeah.
But the actual specificity exercise is actually different based on that individual's experience, because there's no point in giving a beginner a back squat when they've never squatted before in their life.
Yeah,
it's going to be injury, it's going to be unsafe, and they're going to get disheartened when they can't do it. So that's where templating is very different from kind of generic programming.
Just having everybody do the same program with the same weights and same reps and sets and all the rest of it. It's different.
Exactly. Well, cool. Look at you and I. Like we're similar heights, different builds, different strength. Like if I was to go in and try and lift what you lift,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be instantly disheartened at the fact that I can't lift what you lift. Yeah. Our goals are completely different for a number of years. So, yeah, that's where the cookie cutter comes into play. Whereas if a coach was to template it, we'd do the same movements, maybe the same barbells, etc., but the weight would be completely different.
Yeah, sets and reps would be different, obviously, kind of towards your goal is. Yeah, cool. Grand.
What about yourself? You must have had an absolute corker to begin with when you first started.
Well, when I first got into training, I was very much going down the powerlifter type route, bench, squat, deadlift. And I figured that's what I should do clients training or set clients training up as. Because obviously everybody wants to get stronger, and the strongest people in the world are powerlifters. So yeah, made sense. But fortunately, I realized quite quickly that you can't shoehorn people into specific movements. Like for taking that squat example, like my goal for every client was to get them doing a back squat at some kind of weight. But now I've got significantly more clients, and I can count on one hand how many clients actually back squat with any regularity. It's very rare that I have a client back squat because their goal doesn't require it. Like if they like to do it and they can show that they can do it well, then yeah, fine, we can program that in. But I would rather give you something that's more in line with your goals and abilities. Things like deadlifting. Not everybody has to barbell deadlift from the floor. Like that was my goal for everybody. But again, you realize quite quickly that some people just can't get into position with the bar on the floor. Like it's not going to happen. And some people don't need to be lifting that kind of weight. So it becomes a kettlebell deadlift, it becomes a trap bar deadlift, it becomes lifting from blocks, it becomes whatever variation of a deadlift movement is right for that client. So yeah, that would be the one of the biggest ones is adjusting my training approach to be more in line with my client's needs and not with my personal preference.
It's almost a case of dropping your ego, so to speak, and realizing that other people have different means and ways as to their goals. Yeah.
And it's, I guess it comes down to you do what you know, right? And what I knew when I got into training was that powerlifting approach, because that was the type of stuff that I was reading up on. It was the stuff, the people I was following at the time were going down that route. But like I say, fortunately, I read enough around the topics to realize from that, plus my own experience with clients, that more often than not, I was having to adapt things and adjust things and change the approach on the fly. That gradually morphed into just smarter programming. So I didn't need to change things on the fly. I was thinking more about the client in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when we both started, we worked in a big box gym, and there's a number of different trainers, PT coaches that are there, and it's very easy to get influenced, especially when you're a beginner, as in you're beginning your job or your career in personal training, to replicate and copy what you perceive as interesting or the right way of doing it, because somebody else has said it or discouraged you from doing it another way.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, my experience, and I'm sure you're exactly the same, with the wealth of kind of knowledge and education we've built up and the different varieties of clients that we've trained over the years, we have got this kind of approach where, everybody's different. Everybody requires a certain element of similarity, but ultimately everybody is looking for different things in their life, and it's their life that's important. And I think that's where a lot of people who are starting a fitness journey forget. It's not just to lose weight, it's how this is going to complement that individual's life through the training methodologies that we give them. Yeah.
And it comes down to, again, as well, it's principles over tactics. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a million ways you can train effectively. It's not one specific way is right and one way is wrong. It's finding what is right for the client and picking out the right tactic within whatever principle you're trying to follow. Cool.
Exactly. Right. Another thing for me was when I started was kind of based on the similar programming aspect that we're talking about, that every single session I did with that individual had to be different and had to be a bit quirky, which kind of contradicts what I said to begin with about the cookie cutter. But as I evolved, I was experimenting myself with different forms of training. So once I got over that cookie cutter kind of approach, what I did, and I've got very vivid memories of doing this with clients, is adopting more of a surfing kind of holistic-y, kind of yoga-y approach to my training, because that's what I was into at the time, which is kind of going what you just said. And again, that was putting my kind of environment, my interests, my hobbies into this client. Now, whilst I think everybody should be able to move in certain ways, the reality is they can't. And just because I can do it doesn't mean that they need to do it. So there was a certain warm-up that I did that you would do on a beach to go surfing. I was like, why am I, just one day I had this light bulb moment. It's like, why am I doing this with them? They don't need this. And again, that's where the training evolved into reading all about the different ways you can kind of learn and train and coach individuals.
Yeah. Cool.
Nutrition, I think, is another belter we could go into.
Do it. Well, cross my arms and wait for the to drop.
Whilst I'll probably hold my tongue a little bit whilst I'm discussing this, but there was a craze, shall we say, about if it fits your macros. And whilst that works to a certain degree, people were quite literally taking if it fitted your macros as a gospel rule and a gospel approach for individuals to lose weight. Now, whilst we have been discussing in the past, if it fits your macros, calorie deficit, make sure your protein's up, etc., the way people took this was, you can have any food in the world, junk food all the time. And yes, if you are in a calorie deficit, you can eat all the junk food.
Yeah.
But the nutritional value that you're going to get from that food is probably going to do slightly more, dare I say the word, harm than good to your internals.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to do you many favors.
No. So when this craze of if it fitted your macros, I remember it so well, came about, you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, how is this all of a sudden become a thing? And it's just like anything else, it just got marketed extremely well.
Yeah. And we tend to fluctuate to extremes. So, as with everything, if it fits your macros, could be taken to the nth degree, where you're smashing down, pizza, donut, and beers all day, every day. And as long as you're within calories, it's fine. But the other side of that is, of course, that if you're eating kind of these hyper caloric, super tasty, hyper palatable type foods, they're not filling. So you might be sticking to your calorie target, but you're going to be hungry more often than you're not. If you're eating more protein and veggies, that'll fill you up and keep you feeling full for a lot longer and make the whole process easier. Your hunger is not going to be as big of an issue. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was like when the intermittent fasting thing was a craze. Like, everybody did intermittent fasting. I did intermittent fasting.
I've never done it. Purely for the fact I was just slightly more educated.
Well, the funny thing with intermittent fasting for me is I actually gained weight.
This contradicts what intermittent fasting should actually be.
It's all about creating a calorie deficit. I just crammed more food into less time. But yeah, I mean, like, from a body comp perspective, I actually saw decent results. But yeah, gained weight with it. But everything becomes the ultimate fix. And then we swing back from that and go to the other extreme, whatever that is. So yeah, but yeah.
Brendan, I think we should touch on the point what intermittent fasting is very briefly, just in case we're chucking phrases out that people don't know. I saw this post the other day and I thought it was brilliant. Describe intermittent fasting in 2 words. Skip breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's literally
Basically.
all it is. You miss a meal, or you're prolonging the window, so you're not consuming excess amount in your day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're enlarging the window of not eating.
Yeah.
And narrowing it down of availability to eat. Yeah.
The other way I described was, instead of intermittent fasting, it was intermittent eating. Intermittent eating. So it's maybe a bit of a better description of it. But yeah, it's just another tool in the toolbox that can work for some people and not work for others. So on the subject of nutrition, meal plans.
Oh God.
The amount of time for one client in particular that I spent trying to shoehorn the foods that she would be willing to eat into a balanced meal plan, only for her to go to day 2 and go, I don't like that. I don't want to have that today. Yeah. Meal plans don't work. Like, they just don't. Having a kind of meal plan works. Like, having a rough idea of what you're going to eat for the week can work, but having
framework, basically.
Yeah. It's a bit more flexible and means that you can shop at the start of the week or shop a couple of times a week and get all the ingredients in, so it's easy to prep. All the stuff's there. You're not having to make things up on the fly or pop into the shops on the way home when you're hungry. That can work. But having set in stone, this is what you're going to have on Monday, to the number of almonds you're going to have at lunchtime with your fucking salad, that sort of thing doesn't work. Like, have frameworks, have templates, have stuff that you can prep in advance, but allow yourself some flexibility to kind of work around it.
Definitely. I think meal plans for a certain demographic of the population work. Generally given from dietitians to the extreme weight loss categories.
Okay, yep, we can see that.
I think that works. But as a general population, for the most part of clients that we work with and clients who are potentially listening to this, and people who are listening to this, meal plans teach you to basically follow a meal plan and don't teach you anything else about the nutritional value that you're actually putting into your body.
Yeah. They don't develop any good habits, do they?
No, not at all. In fact, they probably create more damaging relationships with food than they're supposed to. Yeah. So I was the same. I thought meal plans, whilst I have calorie meal plans within my academy, they're purely for show in terms of this is what 14, 16, 1800, 2000, 220, 240 look like.
Yep.
But overall, they're exactly the same foods. Yeah. Just with a greater value. Yeah. To indicate, to show that that's what it is. But then there's also a completely different section as well. But that's all it teaches you, is like, you can have, like, some meal plans are ridiculous. Who's going to have tuna first thing in the morning? Really? Come on.
I could think of a lot more interesting things I'd like to eat.
Exactly, and that's the problem. Like with these meal plans, is they generally give you kind of foods that you wouldn't necessarily eat at the times that you're used to eating them. Yeah, as well. Yeah, but I think the difference between meal plans and meal planning is your weekly food shop. That's it. Yeah, planning what you're going to eat for the week, which is a completely different thing. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to differentiate the two. It's meal planning is definitely worth it because it gives you an opportunity to prep and get things in when you're in that kind of headspace of thinking about that sort of stuff, rather than trying to shop on the fly and, you know, potentially find yourself in the marshmallow aisle buying marshmallows.
Hey, see, come winter, I am a sucker for. I won't have dessert, but I'll have a hot chocolate with marshmallows every single night during the winter.
I'll skip the hot chocolate. I'll just have the marshmallows.
No, I don't know how you.
Yeah, I like hot chocolate, but yeah.
It's just instead of dessert, and because it's generally the light option, you know, it's the hot chocolate and dairy milk with light, so you know it's very easy to kind of control and put your big marshmallows in. You know how much that is.
You can fit it in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not gonna. People will listen to that and go, "Holy shit! I can't believe he has hot chocolate marshmallows every single night." But what I do during the day and during the week massively offsets that anyway.
Yeah. It works within your overall framework.
Yeah, of course, exactly.
That's what matters. Next.
Well,
what you got?
I think meal plans was quite a big one. It was quite big. I'm trying to think off the cuff because you kind of surprised this topic on me this morning. And I'm having to remember back 6 years of this.
It's only been 6 years. I thought you started at Virgin before that.
No, I've been
2015.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, wow.
It just shows you 6 years you can start at the very bottom and you can, speaking for the both of us, build global online businesses within 6 years. Overnight success, Dave, that's what we are, an overnight success.
That's it. Overnight success.
I'm trying to think. Yes, protein. Breakfasts. That was one I remember in the staff room, in the office, when we were there, about how I would go in and just rock up with Weetabix and, you know, eat a bowl of cereal or something like that. I'd have it before I came to work. I remember certain people would always kind of raise eyebrows at the fact that that wasn't beneficial to my day or to my week or to my goals. You know, you'd hear other trainers go, "Oh, I scrambled egg and salmon and spinach," and don't get me wrong, I enjoy that food. But it's at 5:30 in the morning when I was getting up, the last thing I was wanting to do was make that sort of stuff. I'd probably have that later on in the day.
Yeah.
And I remember a conversation about needing to grow up with when it comes to my nutrition and stop eating like a child. I'm like, well, it's what I enjoy. And I think it's whilst certain things like that. Okay, I had a conversation with a client earlier on today about on the fly she would have a bar of chocolate in the morning as she's heading out the door, but she wouldn't give her kids the chocolate because the only time they can have chocolate is Christmas and Easter, right?
Okay.
And that's fine for the kids, but what I said is you're being a hypocrite because you're setting one rules for your kids and one rule for yourself, and what you're trying to do is install good habits within your child and you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ways that you can still enjoy it. So we're talking about prepping the night before. And that's one thing that I learned from that conversation I had with this trainer all those years ago was prepping the night before enabled me to have a better or a more substantial breakfast first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I didn't always have that nutrient-packed food. Oh, cereal is fine. But as long as you're doing that, for me, it was like I was doing it every so often after that. But I think the words like stop eating like a child really kind of resonated with me. But that doesn't really, that changed my mind to plan the night before more than anything else. It's a long-winded way of me getting to that point, but planning the night before really did open up this whole different avenue of breakfast eating for me.
Sure. So, meaning that you had a more balanced breakfast, like you included more proteins and fats and stuff, or
yeah, more proteins and fats, because when I was, I think, you know, my breakfast Fritos and Weetabix was my was my breakfast of choice at times, and that would take me a couple hours of fullness before I was absolutely starving again.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my approach to, okay, maybe have the Weetabix with milk in it and a scoop of protein powder. It would take a little bit longer because the protein is in that diet already from the get-go.
Yeah.
And all that is, that was just, or even making a NutriBullet full of like a smoothie.
Yeah.
Having protein in there and some berries and some banana and, you know, more nutrient dense foods, I found kept me going longer until I actually, okay, this is a good time to eat now, which would have been about 10 o'clock before I went for a training session, rather than, you know, what was it, 6 till 8:30. I was absolutely ravenous, and there's no way I was producing a good session for a client for 8:30 after that. Because when I'm hungry, I'm hangry.
Yeah, I think it's something that clients struggle with as well, is getting protein in the morning. Because you notice with most clients, not much at breakfast, maybe a little bit at lunch, a big amount at dinner, and they're way short of their reasonable protein intake for whatever their goal is. And it's the thing that, just like you said there, it's the one nutrition change I can make with clients that give them the biggest impact straight away. Because all of a sudden they're like, I don't feel hungry mid-morning anymore. I can go all the way through to lunch, and it's absolutely fine. You know? So yeah, I think that's a big one. Understanding kind of how to plan that and how to kind of incorporate it into your diet a little bit more consistently.
Yeah, and it literally is a simple change of just taking 5-10 minutes the night before and having your breakfast prepped. Yeah.
Yep. Right. Well, we do one more each. Wrap up there.
You can do one more. I think I'm out. Unless you have ones already that you could refresh my memory with.
So we've done cookie cutter programs, we've done adapting programming for the client, not based on your preferences. Change up sessions too often, meal plans, protein.
For anybody who's wondering what we're doing right now, we're both leaning back in our chairs with our hands on our head, scratching our heads, trying to think.
Thinking pose. I've got one.
Good. Last one.
Overthinking exercise for calorie burning.
Okay.
Overvaluing exercise for its calorie burning potential.
Okay.
You know, having to keep rest time short, push all the time, lots of cardio, all of this sort of stuff. When in actual fact, the calorie burning side of that is so small as a percentage of your daily calorie burn on average that it's really not worth worrying about from a calories perspective, and shifting training more towards building strength, building some muscle mass, building some resiliency, improving general fitness, and worrying about those benefits, and using diet and daily movement for the calorie burn, energy in, energy out balance. That's become more of a thing. And actually, funnily enough, one of the things that's really helped focus in on that is, believe it or not, the lockdown. Because when we got back into the gym that I currently train clients out of, we were limited to 55 minutes. So you could no longer throw in a HIIT session at the end of a workout. And it became much more about focusing on the performance aspects of the training session. And that can be obviously structured to make it more HIIT-like if that's what the client prefers. But the underlying message is always, are you building strength? Or are you building muscle? Are you building some kind of aerobic base? It's not about just smashing you into the ground to see how many calories we can burn, because actually it doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, no, so I wouldn't want to add anything to that, Dave, because I think you've just summed that up extremely well. It's something that's quite often overlooked, and whether that takes, where a session takes 30 minutes, even though the client's, technically paid per session, but sometimes that's all you need. You don't need to go above and beyond to just exhaust them for the sake of doing it. So yeah, that's spot on.
Yep.
I actually had one just pop into my head there, so we're going to roll with it. Maybe make this the last one if nothing pops into your head. But can we discuss the anabolic window?
We can discuss the anabolic window. Yes, we can. Yes,
so you may have heard
protein shake early though.
Yeah, well, hey, if you're not smashing a protein shake as you're walking out the gym, you're going to lose all your gains.
From the locker room.
You give it a look, man. I've heard literally as soon as that big toe steps out of that gym floor, gains disappeared.
Window slams shut.
Yeah.
I think anabolic window.
I think this is one of the biggest things for especially guys who are looking to put on some muscle, struggle with. And hey, I've been there myself, which is why I find it hilarious, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But when I started working out many years ago, I used to think, like everybody else probably still does, that I had to take some sort of protein in immediately after my workout to get the most benefit from that session.
Yeah.
As I've learned a hell of a lot about nutrition, as I've learned a hell of a lot about workouts and strength and conditioning, etc., that is a load of bullshit. Because what actually affects the body, people also say as well, if you don't consume it within 30 minutes, I think it was a 30-minute window people were given. There's actually no peer reviewed science behind that. I think it's actually 3 hours generally where protein can be held within the body. You'll be able to back that up, 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, and it's not just behind the workout either, it's either side.
It's
like a 4 to 6 hour window either side of the workout.
So this is where I have started coaching my clients about protein muscle synthesis, and explaining that to them by just consuming a protein source every 4 to 6 hours. I actually get to about 4, especially during the day where it's easy to consume. But that's by you're able to get the protein in throughout the day. Yeah. Because you're having a protein yogurt, you're having a protein shake, you're having your lunch, you're having another snack in the afternoon, it's got 20 grams of protein in it, so on and so on. And it's easier to actually get that diet's protein rich, rather than forcing yourself and feeling that you're going to lose everything because you've got a 45-minute drive home from the gym because of traffic and you're going to lose it all.
Yeah.
So what I do, and what I've got clients in the past to do, is have some sort of rich protein meal or rich protein snack or a shake before you work out. Couple hours, 4 hours later, have something else, so on and so on.
Yeah. I think the one situation that it can be beneficial to encourage someone to try and get, protein and carb shake or meal quickly and after a workout is if you've got someone who's trying to gain mass. Because the biggest issue those guys have is not eating enough bloody food. Like the number of people I've heard say, I eat so much. Honestly, I'm eating all the time and I just can't put on weight, because I used to be that guy. Like,
so did I.
We're both tall, we're both relatively slender, and it's hard to put on muscle mass. Until you realize that actually what you think is a lot of food isn't a lot of food. You're probably under consuming calories by 20-30%.
Yeah,
they're to where you need to be. So using that post-workout window, or even a kind of pre and post-workout window, to get in some carbs and protein either side of the workout can be a massive benefit to those guys, because it's an extra, say, 400 or 500 calories on top of what they would normally have. So it can be useful then. Sorry,
I interrupted you. On you go.
No, I was just going, but from an anabolic window, like if you don't eat within that time, you're not going to make any gains. It's crap. It's nonsense. But purely from a calorie balance standpoint, it can be beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree there. Especially if you are trying to put on weight, and if anything, the carbohydrates that you'd be consuming pre-training session are going to massively complement the training session.
Yeah.
And we all know that you need carbohydrates and protein afterwards, but we'll go into that, a different story, different day.
Yes, indeed. Cool. I am purposely not racking my brains for another one because it's lunchtime.
Good. Yes. Protein window.
I've got to get my protein window. The post podcast window is essential. So cool, mate. Let's wrap it up there.
Perfect.
Grand.
Hope you enjoyed listening, guys.
Yeah, have a good week, guys. We'll be back in a week. If you have any questions, as always, fire them over to us. We're more than happy to answer them, and leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast from. All right, take it easy.
See ya.
See ya.